One software, just so that you, if you haven't had the chance to go in and sit down with the software, just so you can say that you've seen it and you've got the basics of navigating around the software. Now, important to note, as part of the ASUG OneSource website, you have access to a whole range of detailed demonstration videos, detailed training videos, in fact, that will walk you through each of the modules inside SAP Business One. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but I just want to talk with you briefly about the way that you do work inside SAP Business One and what are some of the things that you can expect. So what you're seeing right now is SAP Business One, and this is the SAP Business One version for SAP HANA. So this is the version that uses the very latest SAP in-memory database technologies. And that makes it very fast when you're doing your data analytics with large amounts of data. All right? So it doesn't necessarily have that much of an impact on your day-to-day transaction entry unless you're processing thousands of transactions every day, and those transactions have hundreds of lines in each one of those transactions. And there are Business One customers out there who are processing that kind of transaction volume, and they do see distinct advantages for using SAP HANA as their transactional system. But it's really designed to give you the ability to really do that analytics. Now, one of the other things that it does as well when you're running on SAP Business One version for SAP HANA, and that's the last time I'm going to give you the full product name, but when you're running on that version, it also gives you access to a whole range of these different cockpits. So this is what's called a cockpit, and you can customize this cockpit to suit your own requirements. Now, if you're working on the version for SQL Server, you can still use the cockpit. All right, it's just that the content that you can put in the cockpit will vary between HANA and SAP and SQL Server rather. So for example, in 9.3, one of the new features is you can come in here and you can click on this little icon and you can say, well, look, I want to have a different looking template for my cockpit. So you could say, well, look, I'm in sales, so I'll pick the sales cockpit, and then I'll say OK, and you'll see what will happen is SAP Business One will automatically render out for you a new cockpit with all these different widgets inside the cockpit. So you've got some analytics widgets, you've got what's a KPI widget, you have this business process widget, and so on and so forth. So this is just an example of what you can do. So you can now go ahead and edit that, and then when you're finished, you just click here on the little back arrow, and then that commits it into place for you. All right. So then you can also then, if you wanted to, you could come back and you could say, well, actually, no, I didn't want that one. You could say, well, I'm in the finance team, so I want the finance cockpit. So I'll say OK to that, and then you'll see when you choose the finance role that you'll get a different cockpit. The widgets that are displayed will be different. A different financial process widget. It's now showing you a KPI of your payables overdue, and you can see when you hover over these, it shows you additional information, which is kind of nice. And just the same in these processes. If you're looking here at I want to do my financial reports, you'll see you've got this little drop down list here, and you can then choose the financial reports from here. The other way that you would work with SAP Business One is from the menu, and the menu pops up on the side here. Now, what I'm going to do is just show you a couple of these things. I'm going to swap to a different look and feel for SAP Business One, just so you're familiar with the two different ones. But this is what's called the Fiori style, or the Fiori user interface, because there is an SAP standard user interface called Fiori, and that's what it looks like. It uses this same design, this same user experience, using these colors, using these rounded widgets, and so on. And as you get more and more familiar with SAP, assuming that you do, you will see more and more solutions coming out with this Fiori look and feel. Not only the SAP Business One application, but also mobile apps and so on. So you can come in here and you can pick the module that you want to look at. For example, you might want to go in here into your opportunities, or you might want to go here into your sales, and you might want to go in and do a sales order. All right, so just by simply clicking on each one of those menu options, it will then bring up that specific screen for you. The other thing that you can do is you can also go up here into modules on the top menu, and then you can fire off this functionality from here. So I can go into modules, sales AR, and then go to sales orders and open up the sales order screen from here. And there you'll see there's your standard sales order screen. Nice and easy to work with, very simple in the design. It can be a little bit busy, some of these screens, but remember, we've got detailed videos that show you how to do all this. You can tailor this screen to fit your own requirements. You can remove fields, you can add fields, you can change them around. All right. You've also got this ability to have what we call user-defined fields. So these are additional fields that you have added in, or somebody in your organization has added in. You can also then bring up additional analytics on the side of the order. And you can take advantage of additional functionality like the recommendations function. Now let me just give you a quick snapshot on that. If I call up an existing sales order, and we'll just use these video buttons which help us move through the screens. When I select one of these products, for example, it automatically brings up these recommendations. So it says recommendations for this particular customer. You might want to suggest that they buy some of these other products. And then as you are selecting the different products, it can come in and it can say, all right, well, customers who bought this item also bought another item. So again, just giving your salespeople the ability to make those kinds of changes or make those kinds of suggestions rather, and then drive additional revenue. So that's just an example. So that's the SAP HANA Fiori cockpit that you're looking at there. Now, you can go in if you have the rights, and I do because I'm kind of a super user. I can go in here and I can go into my system initialization. I can go to my general settings, and I can come in here into my cockpit, and I can go in and say, look, I just want to see the standard cockpit, not the Fiori style. I just want to see the standard cockpit, and I'll say update. Now in 9.3 it asks you, 9.3 is the latest version, it asks you, hey, do you want to apply this to all new users and users that are set up to use the defaults, or do you want to use it for all users regardless? So I'm going to say I'm going to set this for all users, and I'll say update. So that change has now been made, and you'll see it tells you, hey, in order for me to make these changes, they're going to take effect next time you log in. Do you want to make those changes? And if you do, all the open windows will be closed. Do you want to continue? And I'll say yes. And what you'll see, SAP Business One goes and restarts. And then when you come in here and you log back in again, and I'm going to duplicate the logging back in process just by going in here into my choose company option, and I'm going to say this is the company I want, and I'm going to choose it, and it logs me out and back in again. And now you're getting the traditional SAP cockpit. So if you're running SAP Business One and you're using SQL Server as your back-end database, this is the cockpit style that you're going to see. So you can have the same cockpit with HANA as well, but it's just a matter of which way you have chosen to configure the system. So when you're operating inside your modules, you'll see that the modules are grouped according to the functional areas. So you've got your administration, your financials, the CRM capability, your sales, your purchasing. It's fairly self-explanatory what you have here. And one of the best ways to get familiar with SAP Business One is to make sure you've been given access to a demo data system, and then just go in and start having a little bit of a play around. Again, take advantage of the ASUG OneSource videos, but go in there and start actually taking a look around and seeing what are all of these screens, what do they do. Now, one of the things you'll notice as well, when you are opening up a module menu, you'll see the additional screens are here, but then see this one, the sales report, see how that's a little folder icon? That means that if you click on there, it's going to open up and show you additional detailed information underneath that. So bear that in mind. You've got folders, and then you've got forms as well. Now you've got the ability to customize the cockpits here. We've got, as I said, we've got a session on how you do that, but fundamentally it's giving you the ability to tailor the entire user experience, as I mentioned before, to fit the way that you want to work. And of course, when I am looking at these cockpits, you'll see again with SQL Server, you've got, for example, a service cockpit or a finance cockpit. And when you bring that up, you'll see there's a widget here. It gives you some instructions. If you want to add a dashboard, click the tool icon and choose settings. So this is the tool icon up here, so you can click on that and you can choose settings, and then it'll bring you up a listing of all of the different widgets that you've got. Now, when I'm running with HANA on the back end, I've got a lot more widgets than I have with SQL Server. But again, it's the same concept. I can go in here and I can say, I want to see my top 5 most visited customers in here. So I can select that. But now the thing to remember is I can select multiple dashboards here. So I can say I've got my top 5 visited customers and my top 5 fixed items and my top 5 customers with sales amounts. So you might be thinking, well, hang on, how can you show all 3 of those in that one area? I'll go and say OK. And you'll see what will happen here is each one of these dashboards will render, and then you can move between the dashboards just by using these arrows up here, for example. Right, so I can say I want to see my top 5 fixed items, I want to see my top 5 visited customers, and so on and so forth. So again, I'm going to go back in here into my settings and I'll say, you know what, I actually want to see my aged payables overdue in here. And I will then untick these ones and I'll say OK. And again, the new widget will render for me. Now, some of these take a little bit of different amounts of time to render for the very first time, just depending on how much data is underneath it. But that's the advantage of having that database sitting there in the background, is it's doing all that work for you. Now, you can also go in here and you'll see I've got my common functions. So you can come in here and you can add the modules or add the screens that you use all the time across here into your common functions. So you can just click and drag that function across there. So now my sales orders is here. So you can even get rid of that menu completely and then just drive the entire system just from the screens that you use on a regular basis. So now if I want to go into sales orders, simply click here on the common functions in the sales order, and there it is. Now you'll notice exactly the same screen as we were working with before, just looks different. Okay, so the user experience is different. Some people prefer this, some people prefer Fiori. It's really up to you which way you want to do it. Last thing I'm going to show you is when you are here inside your modules, one of the things you'll notice underneath each one of these modules is that there is a folder for the reports. So here in our sales module, you've got sales reports. In purchasing, guess what? Purchasing reports. So the reports are very, very easy to get to by module, or you can come down here and just go into the reports menu, and then it'll give you exactly the same way to access those reports. And the same functionality here, if one of the reports that you run on a regular basis is your sales analysis, you can click and drag that across here, and there it is. That report is now here in your common functions. So you go and run your sales analysis report, specify all the parameters here that you want to narrow the report down. Do you want it annually, monthly? Do you want a quarterly report? What kind of transactions do you want to show, and so on? And then you go and you say OK, and it will then generate the report. Now, sometimes the reports can come up with no data. Why would it come up with no data? Well, maybe, for example, you might pick a date range and a selection of parameters here where there actually isn't any data for that. Now, I'm using some sample data that doesn't have anything for 2018. So I'm just going to go here. I'm going to drop this back into 2016. So I'm going to say from the 1st of the 1st, 2016 through to the 31st of the 12th, 2016, and then when I say OK, you'll now see that we actually get a result in our report information. Now, Business One, when it generates reports, it actually shows you the data first. Very important point to note, shows you the data first. So you can now say, oh yeah, well actually I have what I need. I don't need to chop down some trees and print out some reports. Or you can say, you know what, I really do actually need that printed out. So very, very simple. You can go in here, you can preview the report, you can print it, or you can even go in here and you can email it to somebody else inside or outside the organization if you have the rights to do that. So that's it. That's a little bit of a quick view of the SAP Business One look and feel and navigating around inside the system. I encourage you to play around, and I encourage you take advantage of the videos that we've put together for you on ASUG OneSource. You'll find them grouped together in our 15-minute fundamentals, and then there's a whole range of like little demo videos which people find very, very helpful just for getting an overview of how a particular module works, or an overview of a process like going from a quote right through to the cash process where you're finally getting paid. All of those videos you're going to find on OneSource, and of course you can, as I have done, you can come in here into your cockpit, and I'll go to my home cockpit. You can come in here into your browser widget, and you can go in here into your settings, and you can set up your system, and you can point it to asug.com/business-one, which is the URL for the OneSource community on asug.com, and then you can say OK, and then you'll see what will happen. That website will render inside that browser widget for you, and so you can always get to that latest information, including, as I said, there it is, there's our training videos. So one click takes you into all of the training videos, and you can drill down and look at each one of those training videos in detail. One last point I'm going to make, I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but this entire session I've been doing is running inside a web browser. So yes, SAP Business One will run inside a web browser. This is one of the things that we provide as cloud providers for our customers. We're utilizing this capability. SAP have their own web browser functions. It has quite a few restrictions. With this web browser function that we offer, there are no restrictions. All right, you can run any product, any add-on, whatever the case may be. Anything that you can use with your standard on-premise Business One will run here inside the web browser. And that's because we're using a little bit of extra technology called Ericom Connect, which comes highly recommended. And if you joined us at last year's Biz One conference in Anaheim and came along to my cloud session, you probably would have heard me talk a little bit about it. But again, highly recommended solution for you for deploying SAP Business One inside a web browser. So with that, I'm going to wrap up our little demo, and we're going to go back and talk a little bit more about what's inside SAP Business One organization. But one of the things that I'd like to do is just give you a quick